As you're well aware, we're living in unprecedented times. Join us now for today's special program.
I want to spend my life mending broken people. I want to spend my life removing pain. Lord, let my words heal a heart that hurts. I want to spend my life mending broken people. I want to spend my life mending broken people.
Hello and welcome to 3ABN. Today I am your host, Yvonne Shelton, and I'm so thrilled to be here because this program is going to open your eyes to some situations that you might not have been aware of or you might be aware of. In any case, we know that here we have ministries that we love to highlight that are doing amazing work around the world. And this ministry is one of those. This is Child Impact International. And our guests today are Jim Rennie, who is the CEO of Child Impact International, and Josue Gelabert.
Yes.
I got it right. Yay. I'm always messing up names. I think you guys know that, right? That's kind of like my MO. But anyway, we're so glad that you are with us today.
Thank you.
You are doing an amazing work. I've seen some of the literature. I've seen some of the programming. And I think that for our viewers that don't know about you, it would be great to tell them, what is Child Impact International and how did it get started?
Well, thanks, and it's great to be at 3ABN. 3ABN is an important partner for us because we have a program every week on Friday night and Saturday afternoon. So that's a very important part of our growth and where we've been. Child Impact started over 50 years ago in Australia, and I'm a New Zealander, so it's a bit hard to talk about Australians sometimes. But it was started by two ladies in Australia, and back then it was called Asian Aid, and in Australia it still is, and they went up to Asia and started doing ministerial work with children, mission work, and it grew from there. And Asian Aid Australia grew, and it got into sponsorship. And sponsorship is our main activity. And then about 15 years ago, Asian Aid opened an office here. And so at the beginning, we were called Asian Aid USA. And so now, over the last 15 years, we've grown from a very small number of children now to over 3,000 children in Adventist mission schools.
Wow. When you first take a child in and you watch that development, tell us about what happens to that child. Where is that child emotionally when you first bring the child in, and then what happens?
Well, I think it varies from country to country we're in. Our main countries are India, Bangladesh, Myanmar and Zambia. But I think the first thing is that they're a child in need, they're a needy child. And until you go into the field, you really don't understand the struggle parents have. It's much bigger than just an education. So typically, they're a needy child, and that is normally finance related because the parent can't afford to go to an education, or the parent wants their child to have a Christian education.
Mm-hmm. So it's not just, these are not just orphans.
No.
these are children
Yeah.
who are in need, poor, but maybe with intact families.
Correct. We have a large orphanage, and we support 3 other orphanages in India, and so they are orphans. But the majority of the 3,000 children who are in over 100 Adventist mission schools are just either day students who walk to the school, or they're boarders who come and stay at the school.
How did you get involved in this kind of work?
That's a good question. Well, I married an American lady and moved to America. I'm from New Zealand, and my background was marketing and sales, so I'd had nothing to do with charities. And it was a long story, but they asked me to go onto the board. And so I went on the board. And then the organisation was going through a difficult time, so I took a 6-month contract to manage the organisation. So I'm over just on 12 years into my 6-month contract.
I know some people would love a contract like that, a 6-month contract that
I haven't
lasts
seen
for
the
12
contract.
years. Well, praise the Lord. What about you, Josue? How did you get involved with Child Impact?
Yeah, I started at Child Impact in 2018, at the beginning of 2018, and I had just graduated from Southern Adventist University in 2017. And someone that was working for Child Impact reached out to me and said that they were hiring, and it had to do with my major. I had just graduated with an international development degree, so I applied. I was interviewed by Jim a couple of times over Skype because I wasn't in town, and then I started working as donor relations coordinator for Child Impact International in January of 2018. So that's how I got started.
And how would you describe your experience there? Have you had a chance to travel and meet the children?
Yeah, I spent a year before I traveled and met some of the children, some of the schools in India. I went to India in 2019, and I mean, working for a full year at the U.S. office was great, and getting to know everything that we do at the office here in the States, that we do with the donors, with the sponsors here, was great. But once you get to go to the field, once you get to see the children, the lives that everything that you've done at the office impacts, everything that, that conversation with that donor, that conversation with that sponsor, how it actually is impacting the life of a child in India that walks to school, that lives at the school, that's when it really comes, the ministry that you are part of, the work that you're doing really comes to life.
Yes.
And so I went to India in 2019, and that was an amazing experience.
I would imagine so, because it's one thing to be in the office and, and dealing with the administrative aspects of it, and then it's another thing to actually see the faces of these children. So with the sponsors that you have, well, how does that work? Tell us how someone could become a sponsor, and why is it important to even think about doing that?
Why doesn't Josue answer that? That's his job.
Well, let's talk to him about that.
There are multiple ways a sponsor can start sponsoring through Child Impact. We have a website, childimpact.org, where sponsors can go and look at some of the children that are available for sponsorship. They can call us by phone. Our number should be on the screen, or they can also email us if they just want to sponsor a child. Sometimes the sponsors want to choose their child, so they want to know who they're sponsoring before they start sponsoring. Some donors and sponsors just want to sponsor any child.
Right.
In reality, all of the children that are in our program, they're all in need. They are being sponsored based on need. So there's not really a hierarchy of need in our program. So any child that is being sponsored is a life that is being impacted, a life that is being touched. Online, they can choose the child and they can start sponsoring. They can set up a monthly sponsorship payment, a recurring one online, or they can call in every time they want to pay for that sponsorship. They can also pay for it for as many months as they want in advance, or even sometimes we have people that pay a year or 2 years in advance. And yeah, that is online, by phone, or by email. Yeah.
Good. And we'll talk a bit more about that later on. But that's important to know, because I think, you know, people want to know, well, what can I do and how can I help? Because the need is so intense. Tell us about some of the children that are in need and the kinds of environments that they're in.
Well, currently we're undergoing a lot of growth in Bangladesh, and people don't know a lot about Bangladesh, but Bangladesh, which is to the west, top west of India, Bangladesh is a very poor country. Bangladesh is the most densely populated country in the world. You go to LA, it's 10 times denser than LA.
Wow.
And people are poor. And I think one of the big things about sponsorship, we think it's just for the education of the child, but it's much bigger than that. First of all, it is for the education of the child, but it's also very important to the family that they want their child to have an education. The other thing is that in some of these countries, it means the child gets food. And so I was touched. In this November, I had the privilege of going with the film crew to Bangladesh. And if we have a look at, if we have a look at picture number 9, picture number 9 in the pictures that we've got, here's a classic example. First of all, it was amazing the number of solo mothers that there were, and these are mothers that work in the fields. And here's a lady whose 2 children are sponsored in Bangladesh. And so when I met her, she was just so grateful that her children were getting an education. She struggles to feed them. They're so poor that we drove 2 hours in a car. She can hardly afford the bus fare for them to come home in the holidays. And so there's such a big impact on the family, on the village, and on the children. Now, not all like that, but in Bangladesh, it has a much wider impact. So it's on the child, the family, and the village.
And I think, you know, so often we take for granted our situation, that we have food and we have a place to live and we have transportation or access to some. And when you think about children for whom there is no food, there's nothing there to eat, that this program can make a difference between eating and not eating, between life and death. These children can starve to death.
And it's more getting a level of food that's good for them.
Exactly. Nutrition.
Yeah.
Yeah, good nutrition. That's really important. So, okay, what is like a typical day at a school with child impact? Like if a child is going to that school and that lives there, so the residential situation.
You mean as a boarder?
Yes.
Well, I guess schools operate similar around the world. They're in an Adventist mission school, so there is a spiritual element to it. And this is the other key factor. They're being introduced to Jesus.
Yes.
All right. And we see many, many times where the child goes home. We have to be a little cautious about conversion laws in these countries, but the fact is this has a dramatic impact on the children. When you see them singing, when you see them praying.
Yes.
So it's a typical boarding school environment. They get up very early, they have worship, they eat, and they go to school. It's not very different to here. In many of the schools there is a work program. And just like here, Sometimes some schools don't want to do it, but other schools have a very strong work program. And this is very important for the children.
Absolutely.
Because not all these children are going to have a formal career. They're going to be in the fields. And it was very exciting in Bangladesh, this trip, to see the kids working out on the farm, because they're learning the basics. And so the schools are Adventist mission schools, so it's owned and run by the church, and we're normally a part of the school program. They have paying students. There may be another sponsorship organisation. So we're just a part. We have a number of students. In some schools, we're as high as 50% of the students. In other schools, we just may have a small number.
What I'm loving is that you are not just educating them with, basics, reading, writing, and arithmetic. You're educating them to know how to care for themselves in life. So education, and primarily you're teaching them about Jesus.
Yes.
In an environment that is it primarily Hindu, Buddhist, Muslim?
It depends on the country. Yeah, India's majority. The majority of India is Hindu, and then you have Bangladesh, where it's Islam, and then Myanmar, where it's Buddhist. So a lot of the children, when they get to the school where they're being sponsored, that's their first time being exposed to really Jesus, Christianity. Yeah.
That's so beautiful. That's so beautiful. And speaking of being exposed to Jesus, we have Martha Joanna de Luna with us, and she is going to play "Oh Magnify the Lord." And that's what these schools are doing, magnifying the Lord. Thank you, Martha. That was so lovely. She is just an outstanding pianist. And speaking of musicianship, I know we're kind of getting off the subject a little bit, but Josue, you are a professional violinist, are you not?
Yeah, I still play.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Okay, well, when I was I've been playing since I was about 5 years old. And I grew up in Spain, and I went to the conservatory in Spain, and then my family and I moved to the States, and I continued in school learning violin. and I went to a good high school in Miami, and an arts high school. So I really took music very seriously in my early days, and even in my later days. In college, I was concertmaster at Southern Adventist University of the Symphony Orchestra for 2 years under Maestro Laurie Minner. And then after graduation, I started working for Child Impact, but I kept on playing, and now I play with the Chattanooga Symphony Orchestra. So
that's incredible. So next time you come,
yeah, I'll bring the fiddle.
You bring the fiddle. That's right, so that we can hear. That would be wonderful.
Yeah,
that's awesome. So now, Brother Jim, back to you. Tell us about, you have a blind school, you have the orphanages, you have a school for the deaf. Tell us about each of these.
Okay, well, in India, we fund effectively a blind school and a deaf school that are run by the church. So the church schools, but we're the funding agency for them. The blind school is in Andhra Pradesh in India, in rural India. And if we go to footage number 1, we'll see some footage of this school. It's in rural India, and it was built by the McNeilis family, and there's a view of the school. You can see it's got a very lovely grounds, and these children come from very poor backgrounds. There's some amazing stories. They would have no chance in the villages at all, no resources. And in fact, I can tell you a story. It was a very heartbreaking. I'll just call her Mary for now. And I arrived at the blind school, and this girl arrived with her parents. And they had found this girl in the village, chained in the basement of the school. And she was 10, and she'd been there for most of her life. And you think, why would the parents chain her in the basement? But they were scared she would go out and fall over. They didn't know how to deal with it. And when she arrived, she was hiding, sitting in the corner, non-responsive.
Oh.
I went back to the blind school 5 weeks later, and it was emotional. There she was singing a song. There she was walking, holding hands with another girl. And so these kids are special needs. And in fairness to the parents, they have no resources. They don't know how to deal with a special needs child. And they probably love the child, and they think they're protecting them. So these kids come from a real poor background. And so the blind school, it's funded by Child Impact, it's run by the church, and it's rural bobbly. So you can sponsor a child when they're available, and you can also contribute to the blind school.
How many children are in the blind school?
About 110.
My.
Yeah.
And they're all very talented.
Really?
Yeah, I remember when I went to India and I went to the blind school, the first time I got to go to the school was on a Friday night, and they were having Vespers, and I would not believe it, but they had a band going on, and they were all self-taught musicians.
Huh.
They had, the blind kids had taught themselves music, how to play a piano, how to play the drums, and they were just playing the worship. They were playing the worship music, and it was an amazing experience. They're really special children.
So how did was it just playing by ear?
They were playing by ear. Yeah. They had never been given
over the song with them?
No one had taught them how to play an instrument. They had just picked up the instruments. The instruments were available at the school.
Yeah.
And then they had just picked it up and learned by ear. Yeah.
That's a God thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a gift from God.
Yeah. And then in the south we have the deaf school, and that's picture number 4. And once again, this is a church operated, and here's the school. This is in Kolagul, south of Bangalore, and these children are deaf, and so they learn sign language, and we now have older children that have graduated into jobs. And both schools are such a delight to go to.
Yes.
The kids welcome you, They like to see visitors. And then we also have a big orphanage near the blind school. It's called Sunrise, and 3ABN viewers have supported this. So if we go to picture number 14, we'll see an overview. Sunrise Orphanage is located in the country, and it has a farm, and it has about 120 children, and these are true orphans. And I'd like to tell you a story about Lakshmi. And if we go to picture number 16, you'll see this little girl, and this is Lakshmi. And it's always exciting when you're there and a new child arrives. Yes. You sort of connect with them. Well, Lakshmi came in with her brother, and they had been found on the railway station where they were living. Now, we have never tracked their parents, never. And her brother, he was a real little hassler. If anyone could pick a pocket, if anyone could steal something, but he was so protective of her.
And how old were they?
When they came in, I think they were about 8 or 9.
Okay.
And here they were living on the station.
Who's older, the brother or the sister?
The brother's the older one.
Okay.
And to see the change in Lakshmi is just amazing. So these children are orphans, once again, from very poor communities, and we have a lovely couple who run the home, Raj and Lalitha Varma. So these special needs children are just a gem, and it's just so exciting that we as a ministry can be helping these kids.
A lot of the children are abandoned. Are they abandoned by their parents or have the parents died, or is it all of the above? Like what
It's all of the above. We had a girl the other day, both parents died of AIDS. Now, if there's no family infrastructure, this sounds terrible, but once when Sunrise was at the old location, Lalitha got up in the morning and there was a child tied to the lamppost. Now, we have no idea of the struggle, the mother or the father, but they knew if they left their child there that they would be safe, they'd be fed, they'd have a future. And so the backgrounds, I could tell you other stories, they're horrific. And
we have time. Tell us another story, because I think it's important for our viewers to understand the level of need that these children have. And once they understand, our 3ABN viewers are so responsive. I mean, once they understand that there is this kind of need that, you know, we can try to help meet the needs. So tell us another story.
Well, I think when I went with our field officer, Varma, one day, we drove away from Sunrise. I don't know where we were going, Yvonne, but we were going. And we went up into a sort of a mountain area, and I know this sounds terrible, but you normally see monkeys in the trees. And he said, you watch. When we came up, here were 2 children sitting in the tree. And they lived. Their parents had either died or gone away. The villagers were feeding them. And so we have 2 children at Sunrise who were taken from that environment and brought back. Quite often it's when the mother dies, the father can't cope. Or the father dies and the mother just has no income. And so we do have children at Sunrise who are semi-orphans, aren't they, Josue?
Yeah, some have a parent alive, but the parent can barely make enough means to feed them, so they're not able to send them to school. Sometimes the parents even need the help of the children to, you know, get by in life, and sometimes the children are not educated because the children have to work and help their parents. But talking about stories from orphans at Sunrise, I remember when I visited Sunrise, they had me in a guest house at the orphanage, and you know, all the children welcome you, and me being a little younger, they took me in as another brother. They would call me brother. And there was an older kid from Sunrise that he was already in college. He was already going to college in the city near the orphanage, and he knew how to cook because he was majoring in hospitality. and he knew how to cook, and he knew how to cook Western food. So they thought I would be really happy if like he was cooking for me, and he became a really good friend. Like we would talk, and he would tell me what he had made, like
And how
pasta.
old was he?
He was around 20 or
Okay.
19, 20. He was already in college, so
Right.
he had grown up at Sunrise.
Gotcha.
And I had no idea because he had like an amazing smile, such a happy guy, like always a little shy, but like we would always talk. And then Raj Varma, who along with Lalitha runs the orphanage home, he told me his story, and he told me his story was actually very sad. He was found on a dumpster as a baby. He was like about 3 years old maybe, and he was all alone in a dumpster. And when I heard that story, it broke me, because I got to know him as such a happy person, 19, 20 years old, and then to hear where he had come from and what he had gone through, when he probably didn't even remember that, right? Because it was before he was fully conscious. Mm-hmm. But it just changed my perspective, and I realized how amazing that place is, mm-hmm. Sunrise Home, the orphanage for children.
You think about where would he have been,
right,
had he not gone to Sunrise?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Where would he have been? How would his life have turned out?
Yeah.
You know, and not only was his life saved, but his heart was turned to Jesus. So, you know, not only is he like a productive member
yeah.
of society, so to speak, mm-hmm. but he's also a Christian
mm-hmm.
with those values,
mm-hmm.
and he can help others like him.
Yeah.
And that's so beautiful to me.
Mm.
I mean, I think about, you know, and on many of these commercials, you see children who, you know, that flies all on them, and they're sitting there and they have no food, or they're drinking water that's impure, and you just think, man, this is just so sad. Mm. What can we do about it? And I'm so thankful for ministries like yours that's actually doing something to change the world, one child at a time.
Yeah.
You know, you also deal with children who have been trafficked.
Yes, in India, if we have a look at number 13, we run a program called Operation Child Rescue, and we partner with a Christian lady in Bangalore, and she rescues girls from brothels.
My.
So we run a rescue home, and so Anita and her team work with the police. Very difficult, very dangerous.
Yes.
And it was interesting, Jean Boonstra, Sean Boonstra's wife, from Voice of Prophecy, they sponsor some girls in India, and I travelled with her to Bangalore, and we met Anita. And so Child Impact and Voice of Prophecy have been funding this rescue home. And we have to protect the girls. We can't even show a picture of the building where it is, because they're trafficked girls.
It's a safe home.
Safe home. Mm-hmm. And to meet these girls, to see them learning cooking. But the Operation Child Rescue program is bigger than that. It's rescuing children who are in trouble. So that includes like Lakshmi on the railway station, or finding children who would be trafficked. There's certain girls at certain ages in slums, in poor places, those girls are in danger of being trafficked, and they're taken right from under the nose.
Yes. I've started reading a book about a young woman who was trafficked, and she was very, very poor, and she went and she was selling vegetables in the marketplace, about 15 years old, by herself.
Yes.
And this man was coming to the market regularly and just basically grooming her.
Yes.
Just being friendly, being kind.
Yes.
And before you know it, she was trusting him, and then he said he could get her a better job in another city.
Yes.
And that's how they get drawn into this. And so you're telling us that young girls and boys who get drawn into this program, this Operation Child Rescue, is actually delivering them out of these circumstances.
A lot of the times they come from rural areas, and they're still under the age where they're still living with their parents. So this trafficker comes into those rural areas and he convinces the parents that he's going to take their daughter to work, to get a nice job in the city. And the parents let the girl go, and they end up being trafficked. Yeah.
And then they don't hear from them.
They never hear from her. Sometimes they even send a little bit of money back. The traffickers send a little bit of money back to the parents, so that the parents think that everything is fine, you know. But yeah, that's.
We've seen a number of stories. There's one in Bangladesh where an employee of the school, their teenage daughter, saw a Facebook ad to become, to do nails. What do you call that? Manicurist. Across the border in India, and there's free travel. So she went across the border to India, and the moment she got across, she was thrown in a truck, and she was taken over 1,000 miles to Bangalore, India, and she got thrown into a brothel. Now, she was a fighter, and to cut a long story short, she kicked, and then Nita was able to get her from the police station.
Tell us how she was able to break free.
Well, she just made a lot of noise, I think. The neighbors heard someone yelling and screaming, and as I said, she was a fighter. She wasn't in a good condition.
Right.
And then there's another story where an alleged businessman comes to a village, and he spins a story that his father was from this village, and he wants to help 3 or 4 girls go to a nice boarding school. All right? So he promises them. He sends them a uniform. The 4 girls get a uniform. On a certain day, a minibus or van pulls up with the school name on the side. Those 3 or 4 girls get in the van. They have a farewell. Their parents say goodbye. And when they get 20 miles down the road, they get the uniform and they're thrown into a truck and taken across India to a brothel. That's the level of what can happen. Yeah. Now, we're just dealing with a small drop in the bucket, but we're so excited that we can just help in some sort of way. The problem's huge.
Yes. I think, again, we don't realize here how huge the problem is. It's a problem here.
Yeah. Exactly.
As well.
Exactly.
And so, we really tend to think that this doesn't happen.
Because we don't see it.
Exactly. But the danger that's involved is it's enormous. And the amount of money that's involved is enormous. And these people are able to sequester these young women and keep them either inebriated to an extent or something, so that their minds aren't on what they're doing. And they're enslaved. They're enslaved. So this program, what a difference you can make.
So on our website, Operation Child Rescue, if someone wants to support that program.
That would be great. That would be great. Tell us again what you're looking for from people. How can we make a difference for these children?
Well, our main activity is child sponsorship. So if you can sponsor a child, but we understand some people can't. So if you want to help the sponsorship program, you can make a donation to the Unsponsored Child Fund, all right? The Unsponsored Child Fund.
So in other words, some people will say, oh man, I can't do the monthly thing.
Correct.
But I can make a one-shot donation.
Correct.
So this is the unsponsored.
Yeah. And we also have a fund called Where Needed Most. That's what I call our flexible fund. It does help with our overheads. We have to run an organisation, but it also helps us with funds when they're needed most, because the world's gone crazy, and we're filming this at the time of the pandemic.
Yes.
The schools are closed, and we're facing some huge challenges with poverty and hunger in these areas. And But we also do projects, and we want to talk briefly about our major project in Bangladesh.
Yes, tell us.
Yeah. Well, at a mission school called KMMS, and if we go to the footage in number 6, this mission school had a big building of classrooms, and here's a picture of the old building. It was falling down, it was dangerous. There were bricks falling on staff and children, so we had to knock it down. Unfortunately, it's come down, and at the time of recording this program, we're still raising funds. And if you go to picture number 8, you'll see the picture. So this is KMMS school. It's an old established mission school, and here you can see me showing the danger that existed in the old building.
Oh, yes.
It was a health hazard, and it was a safety hazard, and there was a preschool. When I was at the preschool, that's the building on the right. So now if we go to picture number 8, you'll see the new building. Here's the new building.
Look at that.
And so it's classrooms, it's administration, it's a library, it's a science lab, and then at the front on the road, there's a preschool, and that preschool will generate income. So that's in Bangladesh, and it's called the KMMS School Project. It's an Adventist mission school.
And this is how the project has turned out, or this is how it's going to look? Is that the actual? That's the building at the time of recording this. We've started the foundations. The project has come to a stop because of the COVID problem, but that project will take about probably just under 2 years to complete. And we're still looking for funds. All right, well then that's what we need to know. Yeah.
People can donate on our website, people can call in and donate, and the fund is called Bangladesh Building.
Bangladesh Building. Yeah. Good. And that's going to also have a way to generate income because of the preschool.
Yeah.
That's great.
And then about 3 years ago, we entered the country of Myanmar. That used to be called Burma, and right now we have about 600 children in Adventist mission schools, and it is a growth country for us. And I had the privilege of traveling there over a year ago with Pastor Wilson and our General Conference president.
Yes.
And we've got this footage from him. It's number 12, and it has its own sound. So let's hear what he has to say about what we do.
Sounds great.
Sponsoring children in activities like these mission schools and opportunities is a tremendous way to help form the character of young people as they look to the future. They will never forget their association in a Christian environment. And by God's grace, many of them will become members of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. It is absolutely a powerful witness to sponsor a child in Child Impact and so many other organizations that help young people to find Jesus. Sponsoring a child not only has short-term effects, but it has a long-term effect. Sponsoring a child is investing in the character of a young person for eternity. We're taping this right here in Myanmar at the Myanmar Union Adventist Seminary. And about 1/3 of the students, or 1/4 of the students, are being sponsored by Child Impact. People who become workers in God's church, people who make an impact in the community, have been people who have been sponsored. Your sponsorship is absolutely an investment in the future of the church.
That's beautiful. your contribution is an investment. And that's really true. It's an investment in building the church and building God's kingdom. And that is so, so important. Tell us what you're doing in Zambia.
Just one thing before, Yvonne, it just came to me. I think the other important thing about our sponsorship program, the funds come from us to our partner and they go direct to the school. So we're an integral part of the mission school's income. So the mission school itself is being supported.
Explain that a little bit for us.
Well, as he just said, at that mission school, we're 1/3 of the children. So that means we're 1/3 of the income. Okay. And they serve a poor community and they don't always get paid. They always get paid with us. So our contribution is contributing to the viability and the support of Adventist mission schools.
Got it. And that is so, so important. What you're doing is it's just tremendous. It really is. It's making such a difference. These children could be dead without what you're doing. So we praise the Lord for that. What's happening in Zambia?
Zambia. Well, we're very excited. We've partnered with Riverside Farms. Riverside Farms is a well-known ministry in Zambia that's effectively run by American supporters that have built Riverside Farms. And so Riverside Farms approached us year before last, and they've built a school on the community, and so we're sponsoring children at Riverside. So right now I think, Josue, we're at about 80 children?
Yeah, which a lot of them are sponsored right now. A lot of Zambia children are sponsored, most of them. But we'll be adding new children in our Zambia sponsorship program in the future.
Great.
So this is run by the Ministry of Riverside Farms. They run the school and we give them sponsorship funding. So there are needy children coming from around the Riverside area to that school. And it's a unique partnership because two Adventist ministries have come together.
Yes.
They've got the ability to run a good, strong, well-run school on their property, and in turn they can partner with us, and it's a great mission outreach in the area of Riverside Farms.
That's awesome. Tell us about some of the children who have successfully completed the school and have gone on to just living life outside of the school. Tell us about some of the success stories.
Well, it was my privilege in January to travel to India, and Helen Eager, one of our co-founders, was there, and they were having a special celebration. And the very time I don't have a camera crew, here were these children that had grown up. There were pastors, all right? There were 3 pastors there. One of the pastors is now one of the leading evangelists in England, all right? There was a doctor, Dr. Swamidas. He's now doing work in the poor areas of Hyderabad. And in fact, we sponsor an assistant for him. So these guys had come through the orphanages, had grown up. Then I met a guy who's a scientist. I met a young man, a very likeable young guy, and he's now high up in a government agricultural department. And it's something I told Josue, we've got to track these kids better because we haven't been tracking them very well.
Yeah, we definitely want to hear the success stories. And I remember recently I was at a friend's wedding, and he had gone to physical therapy school up in Andrews University, and I was sitting at a table with a couple of South Asian students that had studied PT school with my friend that was getting married. And they asked me what I did for, and I told them that I worked for this organization called Child Impact International. And when I mentioned the name, when I said that it used to be called Asian Aid USA, two of the people that I was at the table with got up and said, "Oh, my mom was an Asian Aid child."
Wow.
Yeah, and I was like, it was very impressive that I was, here in America at a friend's wedding, and here were two guys that knew where I worked because their mom had grown up in the sponsorship program back in the days in India.
Yes.
So yeah.
Yes. What a difference it makes in people's lives. In people's lives, what a difference. It's, to me, we cannot underestimate the damage that's done with all the poverty, and then to come to a place where there's love and caring and Jesus. You can't, you just can't underestimate that, the importance of that. What would you say would be some of the needs that the children have when they come there?
Oh, I think it varies dramatically. Some need an education. They can't get it in their village. Some go there because their parents want them to be safe, to be fed. Some need stability. But really, these parents are struggling at home. They're working in the field, they're agriculture. They love their kids, but they just simply can't afford it. And so when they come to the school, it gives that family a sense of security. It gives that child an education.
Yes.
And it was on this film trip where I went out for the first time and started meeting the parents. And it just touched me. One village, after meeting that solo mum, I'll be honest, I walked up the path and I howled. It was just too much for me. Just to hear her story was so touching.
Yes, yes. Well, I would love to hear that story, but I know that our viewers would like to know how to reach you. So this is how you can reach Child Impact International.
If you would like to find out more about how to support Child Impact International, visit their website, childimpact.org. That's childimpact.org. You may also call them at 423-910-0667. That's 423-910-0667. You can send them an email at help@childimpact.org or write to them at Child Impact International, Post Office Box 763, Ottawa, Tennessee 37363.
I can't believe that our time is almost up. And Brother Jim, do you have an appeal that you'd like to make to our 3ABN audience?
Well, first of all, I'd just like to thank the 3ABN audience for their support. From when I started over 12 years ago, we've gone from 300 to 3,000. And a key part of that has been 3ABN and its audience. And so there's thousands of children that have benefited from the support of 3ABN and also the 3ABN audience. And I just want to thank you. But right at this time, we still have about 400 unsponsored children. In fact, we always have unsponsored children. And if you could sponsor a child, or if you could contribute to the Unsponsored Child Fund, or you could contribute to our Special Needs Fund, I'd just ask you to consider that. But we're very grateful for support. But more important right now in this time, we need your prayers. And so we ask for your prayers for the kids, for us, and our workers in the field.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Brother Jim, for being here. Thank you, Josue, for being here. Josue. See? Thank you so much. We appreciate what you're doing. And thank you so much for joining us today. James 1:27 says, "The Christian who is pure and without fault from God the Father's point of view is the one who takes care of orphans and widows and who remains true to the Lord, not soiled and dirtied by his contacts with the world." Help those in need, the orphans, the widows, those who are in need. We can help them. Just pray and ask the Lord what you should do, and he will let you know. God bless you. Be sure to join us next time. Take care.